Friends and colleagues, bhaiyo, behno, welcome to the 49th webinar of INHAP's 60 event webinar series on rethinking Indian cities. This webinar on business of sanitation, reinventing urban sanitation through innovation is done in participation with Toilet Board Coalition. We have 8 panelists anchored by Alex Nezovic. Am I correct? Is this right pronunciation? Director of Operations of Toilet Board Coalition. Thanks to Toilet Board Coalition for this partnership. Thank you very much. As you know, INHAF and its multiple partners are hosting 60 such webinars since June 2020. We are on this work now for more than a year. And I must tell people who are new and people who have been kind of participating this for a long time, why are we doing this? What is the objective? What are we trying to achieve? First thing is this, a time has come not only to live in cities, work in cities, grow and prosper in cities, and dream our future in cities. It is also time to think about cities themselves. And as COVID-19 has shown, and as impending climate change and global warming are telling us, time has come to rethink cities, not only think cities, rethink cities. Cities are no longer asking for investment in money terms alone. They're asking for investment in new ideas, new perspectives, collective alternative ways of doing things, new vision, new technology, new creativity, and new ways of bringing economic growth, wealth, prosperity, happiness, and durable peace for our people. And it is not only COVID-19 and climate change that are asking for new ways of doing things. It is slum dwellers, it is migrant laborers, it is polluted rivers, it is depleting water levels, it is deteriorating air quality that compel Delhi High Court to describe that as gas chambers some time ago, Delhi. All these are telling us that we got to rethink our cities. And who does this rethinking? Only the national government, state government, municipal government, local bodies, only the water boards, only the slum clearance agencies, only the planners and professionals, only the politicians, only the World Bank? That is not enough. Condition in which our cities are and conditions in which our cities could be in 10, 20, 30 years, if we do not change our ways, do not tell ourselves that we have got to think differently, we could be facing trouble with our cities. If we want to ensure better cities, inclusive cities, productive cities, sustainable cities, caring cities, people cities, it is a wider societal responsibility. Not only government must think and find new answers and solutions, not only government must find new ways of doing things, we as a society must invest energy, skills, wisdom, and our resources in finding new ways. The 60 webinars on rethinking cities is an effort to take urban challenge to the citizens, to the wider society, to you, to me, to younger generation, to students and new professionals. It is to inform them making them aware. It is to tell them that some 820 million Indians will be staying in our cities just 30 years down the line. And we are not prepared to accommodate and provide them well-being and dignified existence. We need to tell our colleagues and our professionals and our citizens that we require $640 billion to look after our infrastructure in 20 more years. And we spent 14 billions in 10 years under JNNURM, which means we require new capacities, we require to find new resources to look after our cities. And therefore, and also let me tell you this, it's not that government is not doing anything. Government had Swachh Bharat, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, Amrit, had Smart Cities project, and many, many significant of efforts. All one is saying is this, that all that is happening is not enough. We've got to get ready as a society to deal with urban challenge. And that is the message we have been trying to communicate since 1 year, relentlessly, committedly, and passionately. We want large number of people, society as a whole, to understand and participate in dealing with this channel. So that is the objective for which we are doing this. I'm not talking a word about in half, because anyone who does this to me is in half. So with that short and long introduction, let me kind of hand this over to Alex to run this very interesting webinar on sanitation, that too looking at sanitation and innovation. Thank you very much, Alex.
Well, thank you so much for hosting us and having the vision for this webinar. We're really honored to be here and to be joining with the INHAF community and bringing some of this thinking around innovation in sanitation. We will launch very shortly into our panel, but I wanted to quickly orient in terms of the Toilet Board Coalition, as perhaps some of our participants aren't familiar. The Toilet Board Coalition was founded in 2015 by leading multinational corporations, Unilever, Firmenich, Lixil, and Kimberly-Clark. We've been joined by incredible other private sector leaders over the last 5 years. Our vision is a global marketplace of self-sustaining and resilient sanitation systems that serve the population, strengthen our planet, and generate economic returns for businesses of all sizes. So we, as the Toilet Board Coalition, are specifically tasked and focused on building a thriving ecosystem to deliver sanitation products and services to urban populations and rural, but really to everyone. And so that is who we are. We work in primarily 2 ways. So one is really from on the ground, working with entrepreneurs and the service providers themselves. We run business accelerator programs to strengthen the businesses themselves, to optimize their business model, do investor matchmaking, and help them build the skills necessary to grow their businesses and ultimately serve more customers. And then we also work at an ecosystem level through projects and publications, and in convening events to help the sector advance in terms of thought leadership, and also to demonstrate the possibilities of this ecosystem. And our programs themselves, particularly the accelerator, if we look at what the program and the incredible businesses in our network have accomplished over the last 5 years. Through our accelerator, it is a rather bespoke and exclusive accelerator. We work with 5 to 10 companies each year in a very in-depth manner. They get weekly coaching from both our team and multinational corporations. We're very proud to say that 93% of those graduating that program are graduating with an MOU with a multinational to scale a partnership or investment, which is intended to scale their operations as well. We have enabled 10 million investment into those businesses, and over half of that being just in last year alone. So we're really seeing a tick up in terms of investor engagement and contribution and investment flowing into this sector. And that is very much due to the work of my colleague Venu Gupta, who we'll hear from later, who leads our program on Accelerator and the investor engagement. We've also, as many may know, a role that we've played particularly in India over the last 5 years is we've hosted 2 very dynamic summits focused on the business side of WASH and convening the community around that. And so we've engaged with many through that as well. And we published quite a few reports, or we have over the last 5 years as well, to really establish our thinking and theory of change around sanitation and what the business of sanitation can look like, what is on the cutting edge of the market-based approaches and the business models of this space. So I've mentioned the sanitation economy. I'm not going to take us through this infographic. You can absolutely find it on our website at toiletboard.org. It's essentially saying that we look at sanitation in a very holistic context. So this is not just access to toilets, it is also the collection and treatment of waste, and it is also the optimization of the full sanitation system as you look at global health. So with COVID-19, we've seen a boom in wastewater-based testing and epidemiology testing for COVID cases, and we were talking about it just a few minutes before the webinar launched, and one of the entrepreneurs in this year's Accelerator program with us is really pioneering on that in India. And so looking at how can sanitation systems and the information and data from sanitation systems combine with other data sets to bring insights to urban contexts and to public health efforts as well. So we also have a sort of surprise speaker, Sunil Agarwal, who's led this work with our team in Pune in 2018 and 19, and leads our work in India, working with cities to help them identify the right sanitation solutions fit to their needs and their priorities. And as everything is often better conveyed through a fun video, I'm going to quick pop to a video about the sanitation economy, and then we'll dive in with our first panel. Great. Well, I'd like to welcome our panel. So our first panel is Innovative Urban Sanitation Approaches. So first I'd like to welcome Anand Rudra, the Senior Advisor for Water, Sanitation and Hygiene at USAID India. And Anand, to launch us into this discussion on innovative approaches to sanitation in an urban context, I was wondering, USAID India is a long-standing and pivotal partner to the government of India on WASH, and particularly in urban context. Can you share with us a bit first about kind of the approaches and perspectives that you're championing at USAID India?
So much, Alex. And again, good afternoon to all the distinguished guests on the panel. And it's an honor for me to be present to participate in this Business for Sanitation webinar. USAID, as a bilateral agency, shares the Government of India's vision for sustainable urban development, particularly its efforts to provide clean water and improve sanitation. And that's a very key role that we as bilateral agency pride in ourselves as a preferred partner. And the launch of the Swachh Bharat Mission Urban has ushered a revolutionary change in the sanitation narrative of urban India, bringing sanitation, its stakeholders, and the ecosystem into prime focus. And I think we, as a preferred partner to the Government of India, in helping to roll out their efforts to address the challenges, is an opportunity, as well as from our side, we see an obligation that we need to fulfill with a great participation as we speak with the private sector also. Now, one of the things that we basically have heard is the potential of the private sector participation itself. We understand that as per the last UN Sustainable Development Goals, about 2.64 trillion investments are needed to meet this. And this is quite a challenging thing. But at the same time, there is this opportunity that one provides for the private sector to come in and extend their hands in the goals for doing the water and sanitation programs in the country. Moving quickly on USAID's engagement in this sector, why are we basically interested? USAID has a private sector engagement policy, which is a global policy, which is an agency-wide call to action, and having a mandate to work hand in hand with the private sector to design and deliver our development and humanitarian programs all across the sector, and to harness our resources to open markets and business opportunities. In 2019, you'll be glad to know here that USAID had designated 8 high priority WASH countries, including India. And India has now been designated as a high priority WASH country. Now, what does that mean? We basically are also more enthusiastic and as well as equipped to support countries, including India, on the water and development plan, which is a thing that we are following. And under this plan, USAID India is envisioned to support the Government of India to, amongst other issues, to sustain the ODF status and achieve ODF plus and ODF plus plus and the market-based approaches. WASH MOU currently with the government and USAID is in place, which is a bilateral agreement. This basically allows USAID to be a knowledge partner for strengthening clean water, sanitation, and hygiene services for the masses in particular. Under this knowledge partnership, USAID and MoHUA, which is the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, will share expertise, best practices, innovations, and technologies. And we basically plan to do this under 2 development results. One is strengthening sector governance and financing, and the other one is basically to help it sustain its efforts. Let's now go directly and jump into the efforts of examples of how we have been engaged with the government to address this issue of urban sanitation and engaging private sector. SBM has been a huge success in enabling India to achieve the status of being ODF. As a way forward, GOI is now focusing on attaining ODF plus and ODF plus plus status, which is paramount to sustaining ODF and enhancing sanitation outcomes. It is with this technical expertise and mobilizing capital expenditure that one feels from all sectors, including private sector, that we feel that this goal can be achieved. Some of the areas where these innovative solutions have been leveraged with USAID are the following. Swachh Bharat e-learning portal. Now, MoHUA, in partnership with USAID and Microsoft, launched the Swachh Bharat e-learning portal, which is a good example where multiple private partners have come together to unlock the private sector's role in SBM Urban. The platform has grown over the years and currently hosts about 185 plus modules covering sanitation and other subjects. The contents have been designed in such a way that it focuses in developing technical and leadership capacities of municipal functionaries. The Swachh Bharat e-portal, as we understand as of now, has over 1 million course enrollments, 0.9 million certifications, from 90,000 municipal officials. Now, that's not just educating, but giving knowledge in the hands of the city managers and people who are on the threshold of basically managing everything in the cities of the sanitation sector. The other example is the Google Toilet Locator. To increase the usage of public toilets and making them more accessible, it was essential for citizens to be able to locate the nearest toilets. So what did we do? Mahua partnered with Google with support from USAID to address this issue. Today, as we speak, Google Map has worked this app together that provides feedback and reviews for about 60,000 public toilets across 2,900 cities, and they are all live on Google Map. The other thing going on is about smart toilets. IT technology and sensors are being used to make toilet infrastructure smart. Companies like ERAM Scientific Solutions, Gov Toilets are already using sensors and this technology to provide some of the services in their toilet infrastructure. Mechanized cleaning. Now that's one more thing which is basically catching the attention of a lot of city corporations also. Manual scavenging, as is regarded inhuman and a violation of several laws, has got a lot of challenges. Now several innovative technologies are being developed in this direction. And for that matter, including the one which I think TBC is also supporting, we have Gen Robotics and a lot of other technologies which are coming into this sector. One of the other key elements which USAID basically feels very much engaged in this particular support for sanitation for the Government of India is to ensure how it can be a part of the IC setup itself. Some years back, we have supported with Plan India and corporate partners like Coca-Cola to implement school wash programs. Now, maybe the numbers are not so great, but it was something where USAID basically saw the meaning and the merit of just not managing programs with the support of the corporates, but the outreach itself. In about 60 schools in cities like Visakhapatnam, Pune, and Dehradun, more than 12,000 girls and boys gained access to potable water and safe sanitation. The other examples which dawns on us is the example of Reckitt and Benckiser's Dettol Banega Swachh India, which I understand is also working to expand its role as a corporate partner in this sector and has reached out to more than 10,000 schools in India. Finally, I would like to also mention about innovative financing mechanisms, Alex. During the construction of toilets of government, subsidies are given, but there are a lot of things which are still not fulfilled. So credit financing options are coming through. Some examples are the Indus Bank and Caspian, who are now lending for making toilets. Last but not the least is the role of the coalitions with which USAID is very much engaged. It's just not about USAID, it's about all the development sector partners. TBC, yes. NFSSM, yes. And there are so many other knowledge sharing forums and platforms with great opportunities to attract investments for global and local sanitation economy. In conclusion, Alex, there is a role and there's a greater role for not just the private sector, not just the public sector, but to work together to make the goals come closer. Thank you once again for giving us the opportunity for USAID to present its perspective.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anand. And before we jump to our next question, I just wanted to highlight that there's a Q&A box for any participant. So if you have questions to any of the speakers or questions that you'd like for maybe one of the panelists to answer, please drop that into the Q&A box and we will ensure to cover it as we go or at the close. So thank you. Next, I would like to turn to you, Honorable Commissioner. Anand mentioned, that USAID has made kind of an agency-wide call for action on private sector engagement, but you are dealing with this on a daily basis on the ground and in realities with your own team. I'd be interested to hear if you could please share with us a bit about how you've led and encouraged your community's private sector to engage in the municipality, and also maybe how that works for you in your day-to-day operations.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. So hi, Alex,
Um,
and good evening, everybody. Thank you, INHAF and Toilet Board for having me here today. I think I'm the odd woman out, especially by being the only one from the municipality. So, of course, we deal with a lot of private sector and private people in particular, and the way they look at sanitation is quite the 180-degree opposite of how we look at sanitation. But nevertheless, it has to go hand in hand, because you see, for us as a municipal corporation or as a government sector, sanitation is not business. I mean, it is very contradictory to the topic of today's webinar, that business for sanitation. But for us in corporation, sanitation is all about social welfare and public health. That is our priority. But we have to understand that we cannot do it alone as a corporation. We have around 2,800 odd core sanitation workers doing the door-to-door garbage collection, processing it to a certain extent, and looking after the day-to-day daily sanitation of the city. But we cannot have them spared for maintenance of public toilet. So we have around 890 public toilet seats to be precise, including 2 mobile bus toilets roaming around in the city. So that is a very diversity of public toilets to look at. And in fact, since August 2020 onwards, for a period of 2 months, we ended up building 350 public toilet seats, adding to the already existing 500 odd seats that we had in the city. So that is the context that I'm putting into. So bottom line is, we need a lot of private participation coming into the corporation to keep things going. That is our priority, is not just to build infrastructure, but O&M is the major challenge that we have to look at, and that is where we have to channelize our energy to make sanitation look like a profitable business. That is where we have to reorient and realign our priorities and bring in private sector. So it was really a great challenge. And like I said, our sanitation workers cannot do it. So the next vulnerable community to look at and to tackle the problem of social inclusion plus financial inclusion at one go, the best suited model was to engage self-help groups. Federating the groups of vulnerable communities. So what we did is, first we worked with women self-help groups to a great extent. So we have around 160,000 odd people in a city which has a population of around 10 lakhs. So it's like around 1 million. So out of 10 lakhs, we have around 160,000 people working under the cover of a SHG, self-help group. From there, we started scaling up and started piloting our interventions with groups having members from the differently abled community. And last year, we were very successful in engaging the transgender communities. In fact, we have around 12 transgender self-help groups, because here the population of transgenders SHGs is around 500 odd members. So generally, they resort to begging and other means of livelihood. But during the lockdown last year, they also thought that they need to reassess how they need to exist in this world. So that is where we struck a balance, and we could engage transgender SHGs and other vulnerable communities, and we made them pioneers in the city for maintenance of your O&M of your public toilets and community toilets. In fact, even at the start, we were very skeptical on how to go about this thing, because it's like a toilet, even the placement of a toilet, you never do it right in front of your house, right? The same applies for a city. Everybody wants easy access to a toilet when there is a nature's call, but nobody wants a toilet to be visible in the city. That's like an eyesore. So similar stigma is attached with the workers who work for these public toilets and community toilets. And it's not just about profitability or the business model, it's also about the inclusion that I'm talking about here. So it was a real challenge. And what we started doing is we started giving them community toilets. Like we used to give them rupees 2,500 per toilet seat and its maintenance. And apart from that, we used to give them all the PPEs since we started during the pandemic, all the PPEs, the uniforms, the shoes, the caps, the gloves, and all the other small toiletries for their own personal hygiene. And we were surprised at the end of 3 months when we were expecting that we are only looking at the O&M of a community toilet. The transgender group came out by declaring the slum area as an open defecation free area. So they went one step beyond to prove their worth. And that is where we were doubly ensured that we should and we must work with these communities. Apart from that, like how we kept them, like I will focus more on the inclusion factor is that because I think that is what a municipality always does. So I think you people are more empowered and enlightened to speak on the finance and the business model. I will only focus more on the social inclusion part of it. In a time when vaccination, I mean, people are queuing up for vaccination, we have ensured that our 3,000 odd workforce is vaccinated with all the 2 doses of the vaccine. That is one part. We have free medical health camps conducted either fortnightly or monthly. And we have given each of our workers with a personalized health card, including the SHG one. So what we do is every time they work, we work with the medical and health setup, and we tag them to a urban PHC, public health center, and they are always screened for your NCDs, non-communicable diseases. And in fact, last year we were surprised ourselves when there was zero mortality among our sanitation workers in the pandemic. I mean to say, none of them were affected with COVID-19. It was such a pleasant surprise. Unfortunately, the second wave took a toll on us. But yes, so that was one part. And the second part, also talking about the financial inclusion part of it. For example, we have encouraged our self-help groups to go for manufacturing of sanitary napkins. So in a very competitive market, what happens is they don't find the proper forward linkage to sell their products. Although we have handheld them, trained them, oriented them, we have done the packaging with support from Urban Management Center and all those things, but they never find a forward linkage. So what we did is we have a buyback scheme. Whatever they produce, we purchase all of that and we supply it free of cost to our female sanitation workers, our field staff. So that is one part. And then also, like we ensured that we gave certain toilets in certain areas to the self-help groups, because they were also trained by UMC and ASCII previously in masonry works. Like women self-help group members were trained in construction of toilets. So we ensured that we engaged them as well. That was one part. The other part, like deviating a little from the toilets and sanitation, is the maintenance of dry resource centers, that is the material recovery facilities. So we have around 24 DRCC centers here in Warangal. So we ensure that we have, earlier what used to happen is we had this rag pickers who lacked a sense of dignity, and they kind of found it very difficult to source the material and also sell it at a profitable rate. Now what we have done is we have given them ID cards, just like any other good municipal corporation has done. So we have just copied their model and we have given them ID cards, and what they do is they work with the self-help groups in the DRCC centers. Again, that is handheld by another private sector called the ITC, which is working on a program called Wellbeing Out of Waste. Wow. So these rag pickers, they work in tandem with these DRCC center operators. And it's a win-win situation for both, because that also helps us ensure that we are recycling our waste properly. So other than that, I mean, some people, after they have done the sanitation to a good number of days, what they want to do is they want to indulge in other things. So what we do is in a SHG, we give other opportunities as well. For example, this works very well in transgender SHGs, because again, in giving only the opportunity of maintaining public toilets or community toilets to a certain community attaches a great deal of stigma, which will take a long time to come out of it. So we have ensured that we have given half of them maintenance of a nursery or a park or a vermicompost facility per se. So that is the kind of balance we try to strike. I'm not sure whether we strike or not, but we try to strike when we assign certain roles or certain livelihood opportunities to a particular self-help groups. Other than that, what we had done during last year is we have provided this micro credit facility to most of the willing self-help group members. So that was also a very good way to ensure that socioeconomic profiling, which was mandated by Government of India for these self-help groups, went well. So from there we could identify who needs education, who needs healthcare facilities, and identify the specific needs and act on them. So that was one additional way when we could reach out to them in a different manner, apart from sanitation, and bring them back to sanitation. Like it made us a very close-knit community. So as on date, I have seen a good number of tier 1 cities who have done excellently well in augmenting infrastructure for public toilets and community toilets, but they have struggled in maintenance of community toilets and public toilets. But in case of Warangal, at least I have the personal satisfaction wherein I see that it's a win-win situation, not just for the corporation, but also for these private public-private partnership and SHGs. So that is all I'll have to say. I think I was successful in covering whatever was mandated for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. We greatly appreciate it. And wow, what an inspiration. Just the innovation that you've brought in to your municipality is, I think, really energizing, and I love just the innovation of your approach and thinking outside the box in terms of how you can be inclusive and look after the social welfare and public health of your constituency. You mentioned O&M, and I'd like to next turn to Ishpreet Singh of Unilever. And O&M, I know, is your passion and Unilever's passion. And I was really, Unilever is such a leader in the sustainability and wash space. And we would love to hear how the brand that you lead, Domestos, sees its role and opportunity to contribute to this space.
Thanks, Alex. And it was great to hear from Anand and the panelists so far. Just a bit of a background first before I talk about the work that Domestos is undertaking. So I'm the global brand director on Domestos. Domestos happens to be Unilever's toilet cleaning brand, the only brand that we have in the Unilever portfolio, which is solely dedicated to offering cleaning products for different kind of toilets. And the objective and the focus, and therefore, is very, very singularly on toilet and the wider sanitation space. And some of the numbers which are already quoted are the reason why we are very keen to further expand the access of sanitation, which also happens to be the purpose for the brand. And it's a very symbiotic or a very linear correlation. The more the number of toilets in the world, the more cleaning products you need to clean them. And therefore, it makes a very clear business case. And obviously, there is a social impact to it. And that makes it even more motivating rather than just an economic aspect of it. The social impact of this is the fact that there's a clear correlation of the effects of lack of sanitation, which have on spread of diseases, on spread of lost, on leading to lost opportunities, especially amongst children who don't have access to proper sanitation in schools. And therefore, that's the key driving social impact which drives Domestos' purpose on a fight against poor sanitation. That's the bit of a background. Oh, this journey that the brand has, the brand itself is over 90 years old, but this purposeful journey the brand undertook is slightly younger. It's only 10 years old. And over those last 10 years, we've had very fruitful association, which have helped us understand both the social impact as well as the challenges which are there in the sanitation space, and therefore look beyond just the product and its use aspect of things. So we are very proud of the fact that we partner with UNICEF in their rollout of school sanitation programs, WASH programs in India. And we've been partners with them since 2012, working with them in the government's initiative of providing WASH and ODF platforms within schools in India. Apart from that, we run a program called Cleaner Toilet, Better Future, which is basically a school sanitation focused program that we run in some other developing countries outside of India as well, like Vietnam, Philippines, South Africa, Turkey, Russia, Poland. And surprisingly, even in slightly more developed countries like Russia and Turkey, you still have the challenge of lack of maintenance of toilets, especially in schools in marginal areas, and that leads to a challenge. The reason why we are so focused on O&M, one is that we do believe that maintenance of a toilet is where we play a central role, which is with regards to providing the products which help keep a toilet clean and sanitized for further use. We all know that what makes sanitation so complicated because is the fact that it is not a singular problem area. It is not just lack of infrastructure. It's not just lack of maintenance. It's also a people problem, which we've touched upon a bit, also with regards to behavior aspect of it. I think one of the things that we've learned through the Swachh Bharat mission since 2014 that the government of India undertook is that it was a massive, massive behavior change exercise in itself. So while the government takes and the public institutes take initiative in providing the infrastructure, hence the capex which is needed to be able to tackle the lack of access of sanitation, private individuals and sectors need to step in when it comes to the behavior change aspect as well as in the maintenance. I think that will what creates a virtuous cycle, and that's what Domestos hopes to achieve through its purpose. If I were to look at the different initiatives that we are very proud of, and focusing purely first on India in that aspect, I think the first thing that comes to mind is the fact we started with a product. One of the things that we realized quite soon was that India is one of the few countries where it's actually the toilets which are in use, more than 90% of the toilets in use are actually the squat toilets, or what we call the Indian style toilets. And those require very different kind of a cleaning product and methodology as compared to the Western or the seat type toilets, which are there mostly in Europe and all. And one of the key learnings in that was, how do you make sure you create a product which works on these toilets? And at that point in time in 2014, 2016, when we were working on this problem, at that point in time, we saw a massive uptake led by the government of India in terms of constructing toilets, especially in rural areas, which had access to twin pit latrines, and hence you had to create a product which does not interfere with the decomposition process which was happening in those pit latrines, and in fact, if it could aid in that space. The other thing that we knew from our experience of multiple years of operating in India is that in India, access and price is a critical driver for adoption of any new product and routine in that space. And most of the products that were currently available in the market were the acid products, which most of us might be using at our home in that space, but they were not particularly well suited for the squat toilets, which required cleaning not just in the toilet bowl, but also on the pedestals where people sit. So a wider surface area that had to be cleaned with that. So we developed a product under our brand Domex in India, which was a Domex powder, which we launched in 2017, and starting in Andhra Pradesh. And we had a tremendous success on that. And it was a product which would give you a clean for 2 rupees. A single-use sachet for 2 rupees was the entire. And the product was such that while it killed and removed germs on the surface, it did not interfere with the decomposition of fecal sludge in the pit latrine, and that's what made it very unique. It was extremely cost efficient because it was a low lather product, So it did not require a lot of water as well. So it actually allowed us the opportunity to create a product which would work very well in the Indian situation. So that is one thing that we are extremely proud of in the work that we did Bespoke for India, in trying to figure out a solution which would work in creating a business for us, but at the same point in time, solve a real consumer problem and need. The second aspect, which I spoke about a bit briefly, was with regards to behavior change. We realized that for us to be able to carry forward this product into rural areas where this product was most suited for, we anyways had to get people used to the habit of making sure that they're cleaning their toilets regularly. And that itself was a behavior change, because the way a toilet cleaning normally would work is that even if you provide someone with a toilet but it's not properly kept, maintained, which is the O&M part of it, it will fall into disuse. And therefore, because in-home toilet use in a lot of these homes was a new habit from away from open defecation, hence the need to educate consumers to keep their toilets regularly cleaned and aired out, so that there is a continuous use of toilets. And in order to establish that, we carried a large-scale behavior change program in Chittoor in Andhra Pradesh, and we got tremendous success in terms of behavior change on regular cleanup of toilets over that. And that's the model that we believe showed us the way that how behavior change along with market development for a product like us could go hand in hand and create a symbiotic relationship, which has both a social impact in the society that we operate in, but at the same point in time creates value for private entrepreneurs who want to build a business in that scale. So for us, that is something that we hold, again, very close to our heart and feel very proud about. The third aspect is more with regards to urban sanitation in that space, which is the Suvidha initiative that Hindustan Unilever has been operating in Mumbai. So under the Suvidha initiative, we've created 5 Suvidha centers in Mumbai in partnership with the Municipal Corporation of Mumbai, with the objective of providing the capex that is needed to be able to create these wash facilities, which provide for not just clean toilets, but also laundry area and also clean drinking water in that space. And these were done by HUL and now in partnership with HSBC as well. And these were located mostly in places which were mostly the urban slums, like Dharavi and a few others, which are there in Mumbai. And the first one that was put up, which was quite close to the office, was first done purely on an experimental basis to see whether it is even possible to have a sustainable solution in that space. And therefore, it was done purely for the CSR objective. What was realized quite quickly is that if you had cracked the capex problem of being able to provide this facility in an efficient capex model, the OPEX or the operating expenditure for running this kind of a system was possible to be broken even in a span of a couple of years. This was a clear breakthrough for HUL, saying that this is something then that becomes sustainable and self-serving. So you're not always spending CSR money in trying to create and then maintain such Suvidha centers. And that led to expansion of Suvidha, and that model got replicated at 5 more other sites after the first one, which broke even after around 18 odd months. And obviously with the learnings, the break-even time has only improved further for the OPEX to be self-sustainable. And what it does is it not only provides the community with access to safe toilets, clean drinking water, and laundry facilities, and which surprising to us were also a big hit in a place like Mumbai, because there's such a paucity of space that people did not mind spending a few rupees to actually get a laundered shirt in that particular way. They didn't have to take care of cleaning and drying their clothes, and that was a big hit as well. So that created a complete business model on its own, in which capex came in form of CSR, whereas the OPEX was generated by entrepreneurs who took over the operating of the Suvidha Center and made it a self-sustained initiative. So those are the different ways in which Domestos as a brand, and more importantly, HUL, Unilever through HUL in India, has been closely working in the sanitation space. The learning has been immensely insightful and rich. And without diverging too much of detail, a lot of product innovation, a lot of ideas came from the fact that when we decided to get our hands dirty in a proverbial way and get ourselves involved more closely to the real challenges of sanitation in India. And that has led us to be able to be better, at providing solutions that the country needs, and be able to think of business solutions that can actually ensure that the initiative that was started by Government of India through the Swachh Bharat mission is carried forward for many more years to come in that space.
Thank you, Ishpreet. Wonderful. And next, I'd like to turn to Manvita Viradi, the Director of the Urban Management Center. So really we're trying to bring you today just complementary voices and experiences and perspectives to really look at urban sanitation and the models, both the realities from a government, from private sector, and also those realities on the ground. And we'll hear from a number of innovators as well in a few minutes. But Manvati, the Urban Management Center is working on the ground with government and communities. You have a unique perspective, being daily immersed in that reality. And I'd really love to hear you share a bit about kind of the innovation, the successes. Why is the future of WASH bright, essentially, from your perspective? So over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Alex. And thanks for having me on this forum.
Pleasure.
It's an important forum which all of you have put together. So yes, WASH is important, and we all talk about it. It's a great time and space to be in right now, because there is a lot of need and there's a lot of things happening as well. So the speed in which post 2014 works has happened is pretty important. A brief on UMC. We are a non-profit urban management center working with cities for a long time, more than 25 years. And we very strongly believe that until the time governments are strengthened and private sector and non-profits work with them, it's not so easy to address the scale of problems India has. And hence we very strongly believe the coming together of private sector, government, and the non-profit is extremely important. What we have been doing is, and specific to our work currently in last 3 to 4 years, I would say, dedicated work, we're working at 4 levels. We work with the national government, where we're talking of convergence between Swachh Bharat mission and livelihoods mission. And I'll come to it, how we are doing it. So at national level, we are working with the missions. We're working with the state governments and about 4 states in the country on how do you see the policies which are set at the national level go to the state and the state government, because ultimately urban development is a state subject. So unless that states buy in, look at the policies set up, and implement, nothing is going to happen. So working at the state is very important. Then working at the cities, because states would, give guidelines, or they would say, this is how we want to work, but at least commissioners and their elected bodies take on the challenge and implement it. It's not going to work. Along with that, working with communities, because ultimately they are the beneficiaries of all what is being thought about, all the 3 tiers of government. Beneficiaries have to be brought to speed. They want to improve themselves, and there are aspirations. So working with them is extremely important. So this 4 levels of work has given us the confidence that things which we talk in the community should be translated into policies at the national level and so forth. We don't see urban poor communities as beneficiaries. We see them as partners. And that's the approach we've taken when we're talking of sanitation, because how much ever the government wants to change, but people are not with them, it's not going to work. So we started our work when we understood that, well, in 2014, government has said, well, everybody has to have a toilet, which was long overdue. However, where are the people to maintain them? Where are the agencies to support all that decisions which were made? So our work happening, and discussion began to roll out where we have to converge the two missions. The livelihood mission was talking about provide livelihoods for people who are underprivileged, vulnerable, etc. On the other hand, we had a Swachh Bharat mission, which is creating infrastructure. So we tried to combine and came out with convergence guidelines. How can we have win-win for both? Not just, and again, not iterating that only poor people should be slotted to work for cleaning of our infrastructure. They need to have entrepreneurship. They need to have an opportunity to do something else as well. So alternate livelihoods, all that needed to be discussed, brought to the core, and rolled out. Fortunately, we have, I mean, ma'am is here, Pamela ma'am, so she's one of our champions. We're working in Warangal and the state of Telangana on trying out how collectivizing self-help groups and women within these groups who choose to do improved maybe cleaning, improved O&M of infrastructure. So it's their choice to go ahead. So working with them has been extremely important. Now these women and urban poor are not just beneficiaries, as I said, but they are partners in service delivery, because all of us require services. They could, when the FSTPs, the fecal sludge management plants were created, we needed people to run them. Who would do it? The best way was to get our women groups to handle these facilities. So to be able to do that, they had to be collectivized. How do you get them digital literacy? How do you get them to understand newer means of doing the work? So all that training, capacity building started happening. So if you see the whole value chain of the sanitation, at each level, you needed people to run it, whether it would be collecting the fecal matter, which would be transportation of fecal matter, which would be, say, desludging operations, which would be emptying operations, treatment and disposal, the whole value chain. And we saw an opportunity that women groups and other self-help groups were keen to take up this work, and then getting the government to prioritize and give them an edge, because even though you're willing to do it, but mitigating government contracts is quite a thing. It is difficult for our women to write up all of these, even though they would be willing to do it. So getting them ready was another task for us. Now, these groups are not alone. There are 3 tiers of, under NULM, under the National Livelihoods Mission, there are 3 tiers of collectivization which happens. Self-help groups, then we have ALFs, which are area level federation, and then there are city level federations. So there is this structure which exists in our country, and we should be fortunate to understand that. They could come together and take these contracts of running CTPTs, which are public toilets or community toilets, or FSTPs, which are fecal sludge management plants. And there are more than 6 lakhs of such SHG groups. They have, and we, with the national government, suggested at least 10% of it, because there are monies involved into getting these groups formalized. Government gives 10,000 rupees for each group after a period of time to consolidate their learning and take up work. So at least 10% of that should be of sanitation workers. By that, you are strengthening people at the margins and getting them ready for this next step. I would like to bring to your notice that Chhattisgarh has done amazing work, and these self-help groups are, and they're mandated self-help groups to take up this opportunity. And they've also won Swachhata Excellence Awards as a state as well. There are other states which are doing well as Andhra, Telangana, Kerala, Chhattisgarh, as I mentioned, Odisha and Maharashtra. These are really states which are doing amazing work. The other level is formation of sanitation subcommittees of these people who come together. You have to again support them by making a subcommittee and talk about the newer ways to doing work. So they are not only now just the service providers, and they've moved up to be entrepreneurs. They have bought their own equipment. Again, loans are available, but that processing, navigating, you can understand the problems one would have. But it is made possible today. There is this loan product. Again, you can do much more, but at least that is a beginning, I would say. The Dalit Chamber of Commerce has also done amazing work by identifying leaders into the profession, bringing them together, giving them equipment to run the facilities. The other thing I would like to mention is on our other works where we've created committees in the urban slums. Now, like we have resident welfare associations where we all probably are living in a colony or a society, urban poor settlement should also have something of that sort. So we've tried to work in our program, which is USAID supported, and Anand is a great champion of that, is Misal Samitis. We have tried to bring 10 to 12 women into one group, gotten them understanding of civic issues, and they look at the urban fabric and try to solve problems with the municipal help. Like if water is not coming, or there are no proper community toilets or household toilets, where do you go and make application? How do you find, how do you complain? Where do you, until this point, it was happening that you would just catch a hold of a corporator and say, look, this is my problem, try and solve it, etc. Now these women are empowered. They create a resource group, they can complain, and they go behind it. And we've been able to really transform this in our work, about 200 odd settlements. But this is to be, I would say, disseminated and replicated big time. UMC also specializes in making films and audio-video material of what we do. As Anandji was mentioning about e-learning platform, we are the secretariat, and we've, out of 185 courses, more than 50% of the courses and tutorials have been made based on our experience, how to communicate what we've learned to be able to replicate the best practices in the country. We also have made drama-based series to consolidate learning of our Misal Samitis, and soon you will get it to see these. When the SHG groups comes together, as I mentioned, they have a more, say, negotiating power with the city governments for civic issues. We have suggested, and national government has brought out guidelines on Shehri Samruddhi, Shehri Saubhagita Manch is what they call, by which the elected wing, the bureaucrats, and the SHG members come on one platform and they periodically discuss issues facing them. It's a unique, empowering situation which you all agree when you're face to face and asking and demanding your own corporators or your bureaucrats and saying, see, you are claiming water is being delivered, but I don't get water. So it has been a great success, and it's mandated under the NULM fold, and that is the empowerment which I'm talking about. So women in sanitation is extremely important, and through our works we have realized that they can be not only beneficiaries but entrepreneurs in the here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mamita. I appreciate it. Excellent. Well, I'll make a call for questions to this panel. We have one, so I'm going to ask. We'll direct that to Anand in just a moment. But if you do have any questions for this panel, then we'll go through those right now, and then we'll take a very short break, and then come back to our second portion of the conversation, which is focused on the innovations themselves and those in the service and product delivery, and have some really wonderful individuals joining us for that. But first, Anand, we had a question come in terms of USAID's engagement in school sanitation, and you had spoken to this earlier, and I know we heard from Ishpreet as well on Unilever's program, but Anand wanted to give you a chance to answer the question live.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Yeah, the question, the School Wash program in perspective, what I had mentioned in my initial speech was the Coca-Cola partnership that we had, and along with that, the Plan International partnership. That basically ended in 2019. The reason, one of the things that we basically were looking at is the continuation of the partnership. Unfortunately, the corporate partnership did not work out, but what happened instead was this, Alex. Smart cities, and Sunil, this must be music to your ears. Smart cities picked it up and replicated some of our efforts in Vishakhapatnam, including rejuvenating and refurbishing the infrastructure within some additional schools. So where we left off, it was just didn't stop. It was it continued under a government umbrella program. But to answer to the question that was asked, we are interested, we are keen to engage in this kind of a partnership for School Wash. But I think one of the conditions, as I mentioned, is the element of the private sector who has to also be willing. From our side, the answer is yes, and a yes, and a yes. And when I hear what Ishpreet said, I know another door to knock. So, so that's the response from our side. USAID's element of addressing School Wash is one of the key things that we would like to support.
Well, I think that's music to Ishpreet's ears and mine as well, as I know we are working and developing some work around that with Unilever through the Toolboard Coalition. So, but a wonderful segue, Anand. Sunil, I'd like to pass it to you for a moment to speak perhaps about the work in Pune, but also, and I think more forward-looking in terms of the work that you're leading right now at the coalition, and the innovation that you're seeing an opportunity around Urban Wash.
So thanks, Alex. So I'll quickly talk about the Toilet Board Coalition's Smart Sanitation City project. So when we started this project in 2018, the kind of innovations that we started with were not the same where we are right now. Right now, whatever we take it for granted was something we were struggling with basic things like, how do you count the number of people walking into a sanitation facility? So over the cup of coffee discussions with entrepreneurs and different tech guys, we came up with a solution to look at using a smartphone to count the number of people walking in and walking out of the toilets and at what time. So those kind of simple things would help the entrepreneur who is operating the toilet to schedule the maintenance, to look at what are the peak times at which people are using those toilets, and then clean it before and after the peak so that you don't disturb the usage. So those were simple things that we did in Pune. The whole idea of how do you capture data, whether it is health related data, whether it is environment related data, the user satisfaction, feedback, whatever. So all those things, simple things that were already existing in different sectors, we brought them together, customized it for the sanitation space, and then linked the whole data with the Smart Cities Command and Control Center, which actually helped the decision makers, most importantly, the municipal commissioner and the department head of water, sanitation, and waste management related things. So those were dashboards were created, they were getting live information. So that was something which we learned a lot from the Pune project. And based on that, we came up with this city sanitation playbook that's already on our website that you may want to check. Now, coming back to what we are doing right now is we are under the USAID India's program, we are primarily focusing on the urban wash areas. And here we talk about the community and the public toilets. And as we heard from the commissioner and others as well, in terms of like, you can build a sanitation facility or an infrastructure, but the biggest challenge happens to be the operation and maintenance. So how do you bring in the private sector where the government says, fine, I don't have to invest in the capex also, like, for example, the Suvidha Center model that Ishpreet mentioned. So some similar models we do have, you'll get to hear from our entrepreneurs in the next, in a few minutes, where we talk about, there are private sector, there are investors who are willing to invest in these private sector entrepreneurs. So they would bring in the capex. What we are trying to work with the municipal governments and the national governments as well is provide some lease for 15 years with each of these entrepreneurs to set up their infrastructure and give them access to water, electricity, and sewage connection. Of course, the entrepreneur would pay for the usage of water and electricity, the sewage connection, and then the land for 15 years. And then the entrepreneur would be able to maintain it. So this would happen, this would bring in three things. One, it would provide access to clean toilets all the time for the residents. Two, the responsibility of the municipal corporation, which is supposed to provide this, that is shifted to the private sector. Three, it would create opportunities for people to use it. And four, you're talking about reusing these material that gets generated at these facilities. So it is absolutely not just win-win, but win-win-win-win, 4 times win. So that's how we are trying to look at, and that's where we are collaborating with USAID India and other local governments that are interested to work with us on this. So on this, perhaps I will connect with Pamela ma'am. Perhaps I'll call you, and also I'll talk to Manvita about this to take this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunil. Excellent. Well, I wanted to, Ishpreet, perhaps I can call on you just one more time before the break, because I know that Unilever has played a mentor role to a number of innovators throughout our program over the last 5 years. And just before we break and then come back to the innovators themselves and the pioneers on the ground, could you speak for a moment about how your work with these individuals has shaped you or has shaped your work at Unilever?
Sure, Alex. I think first of all, I must very humbly admit to the fact that it has been immensely enriching working with entrepreneurs. I honestly believe that most of people who end up in post an MBA are proper managers. So we don't have that kind of entrepreneurial or the vision which is required to be able to create your own business from ground up. So I have tremendous respect for all the entrepreneurs, especially those who work in the sanitation sector, because they're not only creating economic value, but also creating a significant social impact. So that is the starting point. I think what comes across very clearly and what sets apart, I think, the sanitation entrepreneurs vis-a-vis rest is the fact that they're very well aware of the fact that they have a social impact as well. So they start what most people discover much later in their personal journeys, having a purpose to what they're trying to do. Sanitation entrepreneurs tend to start with that passion and purpose to begin with, and that's really, really at the heart of whatever they are undertaking in that. And then they build an economic solution and a value proposition on top of that zeal and drive that they have. So that has been my experience. I find them extremely well aware of the challenges of the wash sector and the sanitation sector, and what is the problem that they're solving and the uniqueness of the solution that they have at offer. And that's been the experience. And this has been across countries, different mentors, different people that I would not, mentor would again be a bit patronizing, people that have had the opportunity to work with. I think what sets apart people who are passionate and who are driven to people who are successful is the fact that which entrepreneurs looking to see how do they scale up, and that's what is the key difference that comes across. I think there have been a few examples in the entrepreneurial cell where we see that people are very, very driven to understand what the business unlocks that they need to be able to scale up their offerings in that particular. So not just be in love with just the product, but understand the real impact comes in when they're able to scale up their offering. And I think we have Lutal amongst us who we'll discuss. I think they to me present one of the most inspiring cases of how do you scale up a business proposition which is solving a social problem, but at the same point in time also in expanding the scope and nature of it. I think those are my 2-3 big learnings and reflection when I look at how the different sanitation entrepreneurs that I have interacted with, what sets them apart from any of the other entrepreneurs that I have interacted with.
Thank you, Ishpreet. Wonderful. Well, we're going to take just a quick break to give our panelists a moment for a bio break, as we are talking about sanitation, or to refresh a water glass. So we have another quick video that will play during the break, and we'll be back in no more or less than 5 minutes. So thank you.
The sanitation economy presents vast potential for global economic growth while addressing one of the most pervasive yet overlooked development challenges facing us in the 21st century. Achieving universal access to improved, safely managed sanitation, SDG 6. The sanitation economy transforms sanitation from an unaffordable cost to society into a solution provider for governments and businesses, a resource and revenue-generating market opportunity. A sanitation economy approach to sanitation produces renewable energy and reduces CO2 and methane emissions, recovers more water, uses less and contaminates less, improves soil health and agricultural productivity through organic fertilizers, reduces the burden of disease and increases access to primary care, enables female health and education, empowers local entrepreneurs. The sanitation economy is a marketplace of products and services, renewable resource flows, data and information that is transforming future cities, communities and businesses. It links 3 distinct areas for business and societal benefit. The toilet economy encompasses toilet products and services that provide toilets fit for purpose for all contexts and incomes, well maintained, clean and safe. Toilet and product design applies circular economy principles to minimize waste and greenhouse gases and capture data to feed valuable insights back to operators and regulators. In the circular sanitation economy, toilet resources, the Toilet Board Coalition's preferred term for human waste, feed into a system which replaces linear waste management with a circular economy approach. Using multiple forms of biological waste from consumers and industry, processing and refining the collected waste to create value-adding products such as fuel, feed, fertilizer, and non-potable water to be sold back to businesses and cities. In the smart sanitation economy, digitized sanitation systems optimize data for operating efficiencies, maintenance, and consumer use and preventative health insights. Connect with businesses, investors, and cities making the change at www.sanitationeconomy.com. Follow along at www.toiletborg.org, LinkedIn, or Twitter.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much and for coming back from the break. And we're really excited to introduce this next panel to you. We have four panelists joining us. We have Yashwant Sitar, the founder of Lutel, whom you heard Ishpreet speak about just earlier. We have Ulka Saralkar, the founder of and director of Saraplast. And the T-Bus, you've maybe seen in some of the videos, a large pink bus. She is the pioneer behind that. We also have Dr. Mazumdar, the Honorary Director General of SULAB, and Venu Gupta, who is the Director of the Accelerator and Investor Engagement at the Toilet Board Coalition. So this will be, as you see, it's a fireside chat, so it's a bit more informal conversation. We're looking to just hear from these incredible pioneers in the space in terms of what they're seeing around urban wash and where the opportunities, and as they have pioneered many of the solutions, also learning a bit about those. So perhaps we'll start with just a very quick introduction, and I'll let each of you describe your model. Well, Ulka and Dr. Mazumdar and Yashwant, I'll let you each describe your work, and then we'll dig into some questions around some of the challenges and successes that you've faced over your journeys. Yashwant, to you first.
Thanks, Alex. Well, public sanitations, like for me, before 2000 is like a normal for me. But after that, I choose a public sanitation as just because of some accidental event. So actually, we are talking about this, not a solution. We are talking about the sustainable solution. That's a difference. Earlier,
Yes,
we were talking about the solutions nowadays in the 80s and 70s when we are talking about the public problem is the problem and we need to have a solution. But we need to have a now sustainable solution in every manner, from the resources to the space management to the waste management, everything should.
Absolutely.
So the biggest problem in the public toilet, we have found that the ecosystem, you can build the infrastructure, but we do not have that ecosystem that can manage the toilet daily after every use of that. And that time we came in the picture, like we came in the concept, like we will build a public toilet with the some kind of the tea cafe concept. We just merge the small tea shop with the cafe, and we have designed in such a manner, because in India there is a lot of taboo behind the public toilet. So we have designed that public toilets like that. If you are standing in front of the toilet, and you will not see the cafe, and if you are standing in front of the cafe, you will not see the toilet. So same time, when during the start of our journey, slowly we got to know without technology we can't expand it. So earlier we did not have any plan in 2006 and we will build a IoT or that. But during our operations, we got to know that without technology we can't expand it. So we developed the IoT for the complete sanitation management platform. That's giving from the asset management information, that is giving for the user data, that's giving for complete all the operational data, alert, notification, everything will be in the technology. Now we are testing that technology right now. So we have just a simple business model like a pay, use and redeem. You need to pay for the washroom charges, but at the same time you will get the same amount of tea and coffee from our cafe. It's a make it free kind of the concept. So right now we are running 4 outlets and we are expanding our complete, and now we are providing our technology to other startups also now. So that's our vision behind of the innovation and sustainable solution.
Thank you, Yashwant. And I should have mentioned also, Lutel was a part of our, I believe it's 2019 Accelerator graduates. Ulka, now I'd like to come to you next. Ulka and the T-Bus were a part of the 2018 Accelerator program. Ulka, I would love to have you introduce your work.
We've always been in the sanitation sector, in the sense we were kind of a for-profit company working in the sanitation sector. And with tea, what we did was, we kind of offered it directly, because we were working with private partners earlier, and we offered it directly to the public. And so maintenance was not an issue for us because we had a team ready. We, even switch treatment was not an issue because we were already hauling waste and,
Sorry, but the voice is not reaching.
Okay, is it clearer now?
Yes, I think that's a bit better, but yes, thank you, Ulka.
So our challenge was, kind of giving that dignity to the woman, making her feel safe, making her kind of depend on this toilet on her regular route to work. So we designed the toilet in such a way, we've put this toilet right at the gate of a park. We've put it, right in a popular crossing as a toilet, not as anything else. So, to kind of to take that taboo away from what a toilet looks like to people. And also, like many have been saying, club it with something that makes economic sense to the person working in the toilet. So, and also the stakeholder, the biggest stakeholder is the government, what we did was we got CSR funds for CapEx because it made that's what made economic sense then, and maximize earnings for the attendant who was working in the toilet and for the cafe, and also take that burden away from the government. So that's how this whole T model evolved. We painted these buses bright pink, and they're out there. They are, nobody needs to feel shy about it or awkward about it. It's a toilet, and there is an attendant inside who's proud to be inside. And we earn our kind of revenues through advertising, which is on the outside of the bus. There is a cafe. We sell packaged food through that, and it's a pay-per-use toilet. So yeah, we try to kind of since Mrs. Satpathy said that the government looks at it as social welfare, and we approach it as something for-profit business. So we had to kind of have that fine balance between the user did not have to pay too much to use the toilet, and the attendant in turn also earned enough to be proud to be doing this job. So yeah, that's what these.
Thank you, Oka. Excellent. So next, I think we're all perhaps familiar with Sulabh, but I'd like to pass to Dr. Mazumdar to speak about your work and the innovation that you've pioneered over the years. Oh, I think you're on mute, Doctor.
I thought it would be unmuted from your end. Anyway, so let me repeat. Oh, thank you, Alex, and good evening to everybody. So here I am representing Sulabh International Social Service Organization, which was founded by Dr. Vindeshwar Pathak back in 1970. And so far it has installed over 1.5 million household Sulabh Sauchalaya. That's the model, that's the name of the model. And 9,000 public or community toilets, which are being maintained by Sulabh. And the count also includes the largest toilet complex in the world, which is at Pandharpur. So this is in very brief, because I think many of you would be knowing about Sulabh. So I don't want to spend more time here. When my points and the questions come, maybe I can speak about them a little more.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Excellent. So let's move now to just sort of a more open conversation. So feel free to Ulka, Yashwant, and Venu as well, and Dr. to answer when you'd like to. But maybe we can touch on, let's start with some of the challenges that you've faced. And we do also have a few questions in the Q&A already generating. So if you want to take a look at those and answer them live, that would be great as well. But maybe you can speak to a challenge that you faced in terms of your business growth over the years. Go ahead, Yashwant. Yeah.
Okay. So actually, being a startup, we have a first challenge is the funds always. And when you are talking someone to invest in a public toilet is again biggest challenge in India. And one more thing, and there is some kind of what is the thought process, a barrier, mental barrier, like people always think about that they should not pay for the public toilet. It's a free kind of the facility. It's a right for us. most of the time people think about the biggest barrier which I found that people think about that is the right, our right, and government should provide on free of cost that. There is nothing free in the world, you know very well, because someone is paying for you. Someone, either government is paying for you, yeah, you paying for you. So that's the biggest challenge which we have found then. And again, now for expansions, we have other challenges also, working with the governments also sometimes as the tedious task for that. Because we are in a public sanitation, so somehow any manner we are connected with the government authorities and a lot of legislative people. So that's again some kind of the challenge for us right now. And might be Ulka has a smile on that word. So she knows very well also.
Go for it, Ulka.
Yeah, so that's what we, so like Pamela Satpathy said, government looks at it as a social welfare project, and we look at it as for profit. So rightly so, both of us, and somewhere that balance is difficult to achieve. So even Ishtapreet was talking about how if the capex needs to be taken care of, then you have to look for CSR funds. So the number of stakeholders keeps increasing, and getting them together to scale up is a little challenging. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but it's challenging. Yes.
Venu, perhaps you can jump in here, because you often speak about a bit of like the education of the sector, and I think there's been so much change over the last 5 years that we're seeing in approaches to sanitation, market-based approaches to sanitation, investor readiness to contribute and invest in the field. Perhaps you can speak to kind of what you're seeing overarching over the last years and really across the portfolio of businesses with which you work.
Yeah, so I think that, from 2016 when TBC was set up, I think the question that we were trying to answer, although I joined in 2018, but I believe in 2016, the question with which TBC started was, are business models possible in sanitation? And I think that, over the last 5 years, we've, I would say, quite overwhelmingly answered that question. I think the next question before us very swiftly, very quickly is, how do we best scale up sanitation? And I think, there are multiple stakeholders here. I mean, government is a very important stakeholder. It's the incumbent service provider by far across India. And then, you have some really, really innovative business models trying to create their own space, etc. And I think that one of the things that business models show is that social impact as well as profitability can happen together. And if the business model is rightly designed, then it can, as it grows, as it scales up, it can scale up the social impact as well. And therefore, I think that the, some myths that I see constantly are around affordability, where I feel that affordability is just one part of the equation. You need to be very subjective, you need to be very contextual. Affordability of what? And, what is the value that you're delivering at what price? And that decides affordability for each consumer. And therefore, I think some of the business models like, Lutel and like Ulka was talking about, they very wisely combined sanitation services with other revenue streams, because the unique thing about sanitation is that people visit the sanitation center every day and perhaps multiple times a day. And so there are so many other consumer requirements that you can fulfill on that single trip to the sanitation center. So I think there's a lot of potential. We are seeing that, but of course we will need, investors to come in, not only provide the typical finance that any startup needs, but more bespoke, more customized finance vehicles that, we are working on currently. We'd also, the government needs to play an enabling role. And I think I would compliment the government because we've seen the government really playing a very constructive role. They've been embracing business models, working very closely with them over the last couple of years. So yeah, I think the overall value proposition plus the right kind of investor and government enablement, I think can turn the tide.
Thank you, Venu. So two of the questions in the Q&A speak to inclusivity and how can we build sanitation models that are inclusive, be it gender, caste, age, disability, social status, etc. I'd love to hear one of the panelists respond to how they're thinking about that in terms of your operations and offering and how you've built your programs. Go right ahead, Dr. Mazumdar.
Yeah. So, well, we do have a lot of experience in this. I mentioned that there are about 9,000 facilities, and this is a real challenge. And let me tell you one more thing here, that our approach is not only business, but business plus social inclusion both. And there is a question there about the upper caste and the caste barrier. There we have done excellent work because as you would be knowing, Dr. Pathak is a social reformer as such. So he has kind of transformed not only given the manual scavenging families an alternative tool of livelihood, but also transform them socially, right? So they have been given capacity building opportunities through training in different trades. I mean, particularly their wards, their sons and daughters, so that they don't go back to manual scavenging again. And the most important tool here is the design of Sulabh Shauchalaya, which is the household toilet. Because you would be knowing that in villages and in very densely populated areas like slums, excess of cleaning equipment like cesspool emptier is not there. So what do you do? Now the design of Sulabh Shauchalaya has been done with the motive, with the objective that it should be cleaned not by some outsider or some equipment, but even the family members can do it. Why? Because there are two pits. One is used at a time, and there is a gap of 2 years stabilization time, during which the sludge becomes completely safe and transformed into organic manure. So the family members themselves can open the slab and clean it themselves. So you don't need a manual scavenger from outside or a heavy cesspool truck or a cesspool emptier, which would be very difficult in rural areas and in slums. So basically this is the tool which was developed for liberation of manual scavenging in India. This is, I'm talking about 1970, when this problem was very much there. So with this tool, it was started. And then came the social issues. So those who were taken out of this, they were given opportunities for capacity building, and their wards, they were given again training so that they should not come back to the same profession again. So that's the crux of the issue. And I will talk about it. Well, maybe let me tell this very briefly. Not only this, and Dr. Pathak didn't stop right here. What he did was, he did an experiment, we call it social engineering. Okay, so the manual scavengers who were regarded as the lowest in the social rung, they were converted into the highest rung, that is the Brahmins. Okay, so they were, apart from normal education, they were given education about worship, about our scriptures and all. And there are some of them, I have heard many of them, reciting slokas from Veda, which is not easy. I mean, there would be very few people who can very well recite the slokas of Veda, but many of them can do it. I've heard it myself. So this is the transformation. Now they easily, they are invited to the families where they earlier were just taboo. They couldn't even talk with them, just take the monthly salary and that's all. But now they are invited because some of them do seeding, some of them even beauty parlor issues. So they are invited inside the house also. So that's the kind of social transformation which has happened.
Thank you. I think too, just in terms of transformation, I'm wishing we had photos, Yashwant and Ulka, of more of them of your toilets, because I think it's really powerful to see what is possible and what we're talking about. So I would encourage participants to go Google them by all means, because they're really something quite different. And Ulka, you spoke to particularly for the individuals that are staffing the toilets, looking at how you can really support them in their role and support and elevate them in terms of their role in the community. And I think both as business owners, you're looking at your own team and how do you grow your team and how do you strengthen their role in society and their pride in their work. Maybe one or both of you could quickly speak to that, and then I think we'll open the floor also to the panelists in case you have questions for each other for our last few minutes.
Well, first thing we started with was allowing them to use the toilets which they were cleaning, and also we groomed them. We taught them how to talk to users who came to the toilet. And, so once they started doing that, and the users started looking at them differently, and it was not much that we did, but, every user that came in and said thank you to them built in that little more pride. And, during COVID also, when the lockdown, we were paying them salaries, but they were missing work. So that was like something very, it was satisfying to know that they're quite happy to work here and they're satisfied with their job, at T. Other than that, we have, a lot of digital backup that we give them. So footfall counters, we have a payment system where, she doesn't have to be, she doesn't have to clean the toilet, work at upselling products. So we've backed her up with a lot of payment gateways, with a lot of data collection, which happens automatically and digitally. So, so she can kind of focus on what she does best, is keeping it clean, talking, interacting with the customers. And I mean, we have learned that, every time we back her up with a new gadget, she's happy to be here because she can, she gets to do more. It increases her revenue potential. So yeah,
it's just like all of us. We all everyone
Yes.
loves a new gadget, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that's universal. Thank you, Ulka. Yashwant, we've also had a question just come through in terms of a question around power supply. So from operations and maintenance for the automated elements of your toilets, is power supply a challenge, and how do you combat that?
They don't require too much power as such, but we have a connection from the municipality. And otherwise, if there is no power connection, then we use the solar panels that we have kind of installed on our toilets. But they're not like power heavy gadgets, so it's not such a big problem.
Great. And Yashwant, what about in your case?
We do have some the power consuming devices in our cafe, because we prepare a lot of deep freezers and that. So we are paying for that actually. First of all, we are getting connection from the normal commercial connection for that, and we are paying for that. So
great. And is that then the quality of the power supply? Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to check you'd answered it. That's perfect. Great. Well, then before we wrap up, are there any panelists who have questions for other panelists? A little cross fertilization perhaps, or Venu, anything that you'd like to ask anyone, or Sunil, there was a question in the Q&A, perhaps you'd like to speak to.
So this is a question about, is it sanitation a right, and aren't taxes supposed to take care of that? Yes, I mean, if you look at the mandatory services that every municipal corporation has to provide, among the 18 mandatory services, sanitation is one of them. And yes, we also pay certain amount of money as a part of our property tax that needs to cover the sanitation expenses. But the total amount that goes in terms of maintaining is extremely high. We can ask our entrepreneurs also, because even if you look at just the salaries of the people who go into cleaning, and especially according to the government norms, you need to pay the minimum basic salaries. That doesn't make it, doesn't cover the entire cost of operation and maintenance, the taxes per se. And here, that is the reason why, if you want really good quality toilets, people are willing to pay these days, and the mindset is slowly changing. Because if it was not the case, then we would not have entrepreneurs like Ulka and Yashwant and Sulabh, who are who would be in the business. Because if there is no profits to be made, no private sector will come into the picture. I mean, that's given. And now profits per se is not such a bad thing, because these guys are not making any supernormal profits or anything. So that's the reason why they subsidize the cost of operating by adding other resources of revenue, like in Ulka's case, for example, the cafe or the health products or financial services. In the case of Yashwant, he also addresses this with the help of cafe and that. So it's cross-subsidized. So our taxes per se do not cover the entire operation and maintenance cost. Because if it was, then our toilets would not have been the way they are right now, and there was no scope for the private sector participation.
Thank you. No, there's certainly a very unique and valid and very vital role for each stakeholder to play. Absolutely, in a sustainable solution. Benny, is there anything that you would add onto that question, or Yashwant or Ulka's comments, particularly around the professionalization of the sector and also the business models?
Yeah, I think that sanitation is definitely a very important social service, but the reality is that the supply-demand gap cannot be filled by public finances in many contexts. I think India has taken a really, really big leap forward with the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. But there are many countries, and maybe there are some sanitation pockets in India as well, where it's just not possible to plug that gap with public finances, and therefore one needs private sector participation to bring in a kind of profitable, scalable business model to fill the gap. And also, I think that with the private sector coming in, I would say that also the public finances can be focused on the really on that section which really needs public finances most urgently, rather than over a broader area. So I think that overall private sector participation is really what's needed across the board.
Yes.
There is a small question in the box about groundwater contamination from our pit toilets. Okay, so let me answer it quickly. Right now, see, a twin pit toilet looks a very simple system as such, but there is a lot of design element behind this, right? So in the ideal condition, it is like the bottom of the pit should be minimum 2 meters above the highest water table in the area, right? And the size of the soil particle should be less than 0.2 millimeter. That's the effective size. So therefore, the ideal pit, the surface of the pit or interface, that acts as a filter. And this filter starts as a mechanical filter, but very soon it becomes a mechanical plus biological filter, right? So the microbes grow on them, the microbe colonies grow on them, and they suck up the nutrients, which are pollutants for us. So they are just sucked up, and the water which goes past this is cleaner. And then the plume of pollution which goes that 2-meter barrier with 0.1 millimeter effective size, that is enough or adequate to see that pollution doesn't happen. This is one. Secondly, suppose the ideal condition is not there. That means you have to construct a toilet where the bottom of the pit is not, I mean, this is within 2 meters of the groundwater, highest groundwater, which happens after the rainy season, maybe around October in North India, right? So there are elements of design by which one has to put a fine sand barrier, 0.5 meter thick, around the main pit, and the height should be such that that 2-meter minimum is maintained. So this way it can be done, and the bottom is normally sealed in that case. Usually when the ideal condition is there, we don't seal the bottom. Of course, the actual percolation happens from the sidewalks. But in case the water table is higher, the bottom is sealed with either cement or plastic sheet or whatever. So this way it is ensured that pollution doesn't happen. So the design is as per the ground situation.
Thank you, Doctor. Kirti, I'd like to pass back to you. I'm not sure if you have any questions for the panelists, or at least to hear your final thoughts before we wrap up. And perhaps I'll stop the screen share as well. And if all the panelists could turn on their videos, it would be great to see all our faces at once and feel the room that the virtual room we've been in. If anyone has any questions, our email address is on the screen, and we'd be more than happy to hear from you and connect following the session. Kirti, over to you.
And participate in this particular meeting. I said, first of all, and he's the one who, being a pioneer, one who's done this for 50 years. And I think, and a visionary and a passionate person, it takes long. So I said, because this is a very long, very, 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 very big panel. So I thought we won't really have enough time. But I just wanted to take 2 minutes of what he would have said if he was here. And even though Mr. Mazumdar, I think, brought out very interestingly what Sulabh is all about, there are a few ideas which I thought deserved to be in this particular meeting. And that is this. In mid-70s, I wrote an article on Sulabh International called Shit Business of Patna. And the reason I wrote was this: that was the time we had started Ashoka Innovator for the public. You must have heard about that. Ashoka started in my office some 40 years ago. Today it is in 100 countries of the world, and I think with more than 5,000 public cause entrepreneurship. Now, what one looked upon at that time on Sulabh was this: it was a social cause entrepreneurship. And why was it social cause entrepreneurship? And that is why I was calling it Ship Business of Patna. That providing this kind of service was seen as a social service. And he essentially gave an entirely new dimension of business in the sense that people come and pay for it. I remember having gone, when I was doing this article, to Patna, early in the morning, at the Maidan, large number of rickshaw pullers, would line up and pay ₹1.50, to use the toilet. And I thought that was a kind of a revolution that one had seen, no one ever thought it was possible. Second thing, he also dealt with taboo very beautifully. They had a big a sort of campus in Patna of toilets and bathrooms. And their office was in the middle of that toilet block. And I thought that was a very important symbolism that they brought out at that point in time. And we're talking about early 70s. We also, I think, brought out very interestingly that at that time it was understood that providing public facilities, in cities was a function of the government. And here was a non-profit to say, look, we will take the responsibility and provide it. And built some of the early public-private partnership where we went to the government, say, you give us a land, we will set up on, I think, this services and we'll charge for it. And we would essentially make it viable. They also were the first who, in my understanding, brought Gandhi and development together. And in this country, I think it's very important that we bring Gandhi and development together. And no one talks about it. And I thought emancipation of the headload workers, their social transformation, is an integral part of the business and service provision. And therefore, I didn't want to take much time because this is something that Bindisha would have done. But I thought I'll just mention this in passing, that these are some very important dimensions of providing services. And of course, one shouldn't forget that in the Indian context, it's very important to look at contribution of the nonprofit in development. Here as Public Works Department spending billions of rupees, and here comes Sulabh and shows how could it be done innovatively. And this has happened in education, this has happened in environment, this has happened in many areas. And I think one has got to kind of look at this in the context of larger development challenge. Having said that, thank you very much. It was a remarkable work. Thank you, Toilet Board Coalition, for this partnership. Thank you, Alex, for managing this very business-like. It was a very good job. I just want to kind of thank everyone personally, Manvit, Anand Saab, Singh Saab, Venuji, Yashwant Bhai, Mazumdar Saab, Rajiv Saab, Pamela ji, and Ulka ji. Thank you very much for coming here, spending time and enlightening us for this remarkable thing. I must take this opportunity and thank my dear friend and colleague Sunil for all his help in putting this together. I also must thank my colleague Ankisha at Studio in Half. She is a very hardworking, never allows us to feel that anything could go wrong. So Ankisha, Elika, Kea, Rajeshji, and Shimul, everyone, thank you very much for this wonderful, wonderful session. Thank you.